Yes, and welcome back to the Fresh Arsenal Show. And today we're doing something a little bit different. We're comparing players and looking at statistics, but it's not for new signings. We are, by popular demand, going to look at the comparison between William Saliba, who perhaps feels like a new signing, Gabriel, and Ben White. And that's because Saliba is, of course, coming back to the team. He's a player who has done very well out on loan. And there's big question marks, I guess, on whether he will start, where he'll play, what that means for Gabriel and White. And ultimately, our audience was quite curious as to how they compared. So on a very basic level first, here are the three players. And it did strike me that Gabriel and White, we consider all of these players young, but Saliba is a whole 3 years younger than both Gabriel and White. So Saliba's been talked about an incredible amount for a player who's just 21 and a central defender as well. You know, his prime years are probably 7-8 years away. So he's got a huge amount of potential. Market value, interestingly, Ben White comes out on top, perhaps because of what Arsenal paid for him last year and his sort of English premium. And in terms of position, then, they're all central defenders, of course. Ben White, though, only really the one who can play in a few different positions. And that could come in handy if we're looking to get all three on the pitch at one point. So as we've seen, White can play at right back. His time at Brighton also saw him sometimes play in defensive midfield as well, which is quite interesting. And in terms of footedness, then, we know Arteta does prefer to have a left footer at left centre-back. So Gabriel is currently the only one of the three who uses his left foot as his main foot, as you see, 93%. And Saliba has played a little bit on the left centre-back, but he is someone who uses his right foot a huge amount, as you can see, 94%. So the first thing we're looking at here is passing and possession. Saliba, I think I saw a stat, has made the most passes of a defender ever in the French league last year, which is quite remarkable. And what we're looking at here is a little web radar chart that we've put together. And Saliba's coming out a very top percentile on pretty much everything here. Pass completion, you can see he's quite a bit above White and a bit above Gabriel as well. Passes per 90, long pass completion, really interesting here. He's miles above Ben White and Gabriel as well. Short pass completion, all pretty high. But again, there's a perception probably that White is pretty good in possession. And this chart has him coming out below everyone in every area apart from key passes, which is quite interesting because I think White sort of plays those more high-risk passes. He goes long quite often, looking through to Saka and Martinelli over the top. So you can see that pays off. And actually, Saliba, whilst he's the most secure in possession and makes the most passes, in terms of key passes, he's making the least out of the three. So just to build on that passing and possession stats, then, we've got the three next to each other. And White's got a lot of red next to his name. He is the lowest on pretty much all of these statistics when you look at passing of the three. And Gabriel's really come on this season. We're looking at just last season's statistics. So Saliba then, huge amount of passes per 90, 79.6 compared to White's 48 per 90. Massive difference there. So if Arteta's looking to really dominate possession, Saliba does look like the perfect central defender for him. And what surprised me a little bit is the progressive carry stat here. So Saliba actually makes 6.75 carries up the pitch per game. That is more than double White, and Gabriel's actually in at second, because I think we think of White as a player who does bring that ball forward. But I guess perhaps what this stat shows is when White does bring the ball forward, he brings it forward quite some distance and maybe does it less frequently. But Saliba is constantly sort of making those 10-yard carries up the pitch. So now we're looking at defensive actions then, and that's where it gets a little bit more level across the three. Tackles, Saliba is edging the other two. Dribblers tackled. So in terms of 1v1 defending, Gabriel coming out on top and White second, Saliba last. In terms of blocks, White comes out on top, as well as aerial duels one, which is very interesting because White is the smallest of the three, but he's actually averaging more aerial duels per game. And that's interesting because there was very much a perception that White was quite weak in the air. And, you know, some of this is skewed due to the fact that when opposition are playing against White and Gabriel, they're probably putting their big forwards on White because they see him as a physically smaller player to win those duels against. So this all does have some skews. Obviously, Saliba, again, you could argue, has less opportunity to win aerial duels in a team that's been dominating the possession as much as he does. In terms of fouls then, Saliba's got pretty impressive stats there as well. Less than half a foul per 90. Again, though, you would say that's perhaps because his team had so much possession last season. So when we take into account the footedness of the central defenders and also the statistics that we've been looking at, it's led many people to say, should Saliba be playing over Ben White next season? Should Arsenal have even signed Ben White? I think White's proven to be a good signing, and defensive statistics are still not perfect. Everyone in data would sort of agree with that. And I think White passes the eye test for sure, and certainly has been a good signing. And Saliba, though, matching up quite similarly to him in profile, but interestingly beating him in a lot of the statistics. And this radar's from Oh That Crab on Twitter, and you can see the red sort of netted bars are Ben White and the blue is William Saliba. What this doesn't account for then is the difference in league quality. The Premier League, obviously a much quicker league and a league that has more quality players in it, especially in the bottom half. So Saliba is likely to drop back in some of these metrics when he's playing in the Premier League. And what that could create is something very similar between the two players. So how could they all play together then? Well, the first thing for me would be that if Arsenal don't sign another right back this summer, if Tomiyasu were to get injured or need to be rotated out, this is the kind of thing I'd like to see. Arsenal had a very good period over the Christmas period and the New Year with White playing at right back. The team then decided to go for Cedric and some other players on the right. And then the balance didn't work out quite as well. But I think this back four, when Tomiyasu's out, would give Arsenal a lot of control. Players who are all very comfortable on the ball. You could see Arsenal playing out from the back very comfortably with a back four like this. Another option then is at times to match up with teams. I'm thinking particularly if we were going to Tottenham away, Chelsea away, teams who play a back three regularly. We could go into games like this with an extremely strong defensive unit, trying to match them up and just build out from the back again. This is, you know, three very good, comfortable players on the ball. And then you've got Tomiyasu and Tierney either side, both defensively strong. And not necessarily just starting the game with this. We've seen Rob Holding come off the bench in many games this season and Arsenal revert to a back five. Next season, there's going to be 5 subs, so even more opportunity to do something like this. And if we're bringing White or Saliba or even Gabriel on instead of Holding, that is marked up in quality. And I feel would give us some more control in games rather than just sitting back completely. Another key thing here is rotation. Arsenal need to rotate this season. They're back in Europe. They're back with a lot of games, a lot of minutes. We've got a World Cup in the middle of the season. And Arsenal will need to rotate, and they need at least 3 quality centre-backs. Injuries. Arsenal felt perhaps hard done by with injuries to Tomiyasu, Tierney and Partey this season, but Arsenal actually had some of the best injury lost days of anyone in the league. I think we were sort of 18th in terms of the amount of injuries, days lost to injury. So Arsenal were pretty lucky with Gabriel and White's fitness this season. They played a lot of games between them. And with Europe back on the cards, you know, that's something Ben White's never had to contest with. For example, players are going to get injured and we need a quality player to step in. The Europa League is a massive opportunity for Arsenal to get back in the Champions League and win some silverware. And you don't want to be starting the same centre backs in the league and Europa League every single game. So there's going to be plenty of minutes for these players. And following up from that is the 5 subs. There's 5 subs in the Europa League, 5 subs in the Premier League, and plenty of opportunity to get minutes for all 3 of these players.